Hi, Kavita. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Sudha, are you able to hear me? I'm just getting a message that my connection is unstable. So just want to make sure that everyone can hear me before I start.
Yes,
You can? Okay.
yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is day 5 of our potential majors workshop series that we're doing on the pre-college advising team. I don't know if some of you have maybe attended one or two already to explore other majors, but for those who have, you're already aware, and for those who haven't, the reason we're doing this series is to familiarize you guys with 3 important things about every educational path you can follow. Number one, what are majors that you can study in that path? What are admission criteria? Rather, that is sort of combined part 1 and 2, right? What are the different majors within STEM that you can study? What are the important criteria that universities evaluate when they're considering you for admission? um, what is the actual program like when you're at university? So what is it like to study engineering or computer science or mathematics at university? And then finally, what are potential career options that studying, biology or mathematics or computer science can prepare you for? So we'll touch on this. STEM, probably like every other educational path is, there's a lot of information. It's just, I would say that if we look at the six topics we're doing this week, right? That there's been business, there's been law, there's been design, medicine. There's going to be psychology and biochemistry tomorrow, and then today's STEM. So this is STEM is actually this catch-all term that packs so many majors into one. So I think this is the most dense topic, which, given the 1 hour time limit, may preclude us from going into too much depth. But that's okay, because in case you have any questions that we're unable to answer today, or if there's anything that we don't go into adequate depth for you, you can always reach out to your counselors. A lot of you are in grade 11, so I speak to you. You're either my students or I speak to you off and on anyway. So I'm happy to join calls, and even if I'm not someone you've spoken to already, you can request your counselor anytime to rope me onto a call with you guys and or with your parents, and I'd be happy to address any questions you have that we're unable to get to today. So the format that I've thought of for today is, I want to keep the actual presentation bit to a minimum. Like I said, we're not going to go into too much depth because there's such a broad range of majors that the term STEM encompasses. I actually want to leave sufficient time for everyone to ask questions. So I'll the format will be that I'll go through these couple of slides touching on the topics that I mentioned earlier. And in the end, we'll open it up for questions. However, while I'm going through slides, if everyone has a really pressing question and you think that if you wait, till the end, you may forget, or it may go out of context, just put your hand up on using that Zoom option, and I'll call on you and we can address your question right away. Okay, fantastic. So let me just begin. So that is my screen visible.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So, okay. So as I said, at the beginning, STEM is this catch-all phrase now that encompasses so many different majors. In fact, I've listed a bunch on the screen, but even these probably only cover about half the number of majors that you can actually study that fall under STEM. There are two pretty popular areas in STEM that we've covered in standalone workshops. One is medicine, and the other is sort of psychology cum biochemistry. So we're not going to go into depth about those today. We will go into some depth about the others. And for that purpose, I've broken STEM into 3 broad categories, as you can see on your screen. And the reason I've broken it into these 3 categories is this is pretty much how universities evaluate you, right? They either evaluate you for engineering, or they evaluate you for pure sciences, and computing, which is in the middle, can go one way or the other. There are some universities that offer their computer science programs in the School of Engineering. There are some that offer it in the School of Arts and Sciences, and there are some that offer it in both. It doesn't really impact the way you prepare for it or the way you apply for it. So it's not very important to know that distinction right now. But broadly, these are the 3 areas of STEM that our students are interested in: engineering, computing, and the sciences. In engineering, you'll see that that in each box, I've underlined one of the types of engineering and put a couple beneath it. And that's because the ones that are underlined are sort of the 4 main regions of engineering, and the others sort of become subparts of that particular type of engineering. So for example, mechanical engineering, which is designing objects, not really going into the circuitry, but just the design, the aerodynamics, the ease of use, that falls under mechanical engineering. And aerospace and biomedical are typically regarded as being subsets of mechanical engineering. Electrical engineering is anything that deals with putting circuitry and chipsets together. So computer engineering at most colleges is actually offered as a joint major along with electrical. Some colleges offer computer engineering as a standalone major. Some will offer computer and electrical as one major. There's no real difference. Computer, like I said, becomes a subset of electrical engineering, where electrical deals with any kind of circuitry. Computer engineering deals specifically with chipsets. The third major domain of engineering is civil, which, for those who are unfamiliar, many of you may be familiar, has to do with like designing buildings, right? So in a way, it's kind of like mechanical. You are applying concepts of physics to see how a structure can be the most rigid and the most stable. But because it's applied in the specific context of buildings and structures of that scale, it's sort of gets its own domain. And architecture is sort of an important subtype that employs and applies the similar concepts and probably expects similar profile building. And the last is chemical, right? Dealing with how you can synthesize different materials out of different compounds. Material science and environmental engineering are 2 important subparts of chemical engineering, both deal with advanced knowledge of compounds and chemicals and how they combine, and how you can combine 2 different chemicals or 2 different materials to get a desired characteristics out of some material that you want to use to construct something. Okay, for example, you may want to research how particular chemicals can combine to form what is that called, a battery fluid, right? That may make batteries more long lasting. So mechanical, electrical, civil, and chemical, not only are the subdomains of engineering that are under the underlying ones a part of the larger domain. For example, aerospace and biomedical can be broadly a part of mechanical, but colleges will also accept profile building in any of them when you apply. So for example, if I'm applying for mechanical, but a lot of my experience has been working with drones and designing aircraft on using CAD software, that is sufficient profile building for mechanical engineering. Similarly, if I'm applying for computer engineering, but a lot of my experience has been in robotics, putting circuitry together, that is sufficient profile building for electrical engineering, and then so on and so forth. I would say out of the STEM, out of the 3 STEM, areas that I've highlighted here, engineering and computing are probably the 2 most popular, followed by natural sciences. So that pretty nicely brings me into computing. I would say, computer science in all of these, if you look at all the single majors that I put in boxes, computer science is probably the most popular major amongst all our STEM students, right? It's and with good reason. It's a lot easier to prepare for. You don't need materials, you don't need any hardware, you don't need to buy batteries and wires, and you don't need to buy expensive CAD software to design things. You really just need a computer. So getting into computer science when you're young is a lot easier. You can just get on your computer, go on the internet, and find courses to learn different languages and then different projects to do. And also because it's the most sought after, right? So it's the most sought after major in colleges, and it's the most lucrative career option that you can have is a career that results from all these computing majors. So probably that's why it's the most popular with our students, and also our parents are also usually quite keen on their kids studying computer science when they're undecided between STEM. So, as you can see on your screen, there are 4 broad majors in computing that I've highlighted: as computer science, data science, AI, and information science. Computer science is kind of at this point now becoming another catch-all phrase, because there are so many areas within computer science that most students who want to study it are familiar with which area of computer science they want to specialize in. Do they want to specialize in AI? Do they want to specialize in software engineering? Do they want to specialize in information systems, databases? So if you want to study computer science and you're now in grade 11, you should either already have an idea or be working towards getting an idea of what within computer science interests you. Like I said, it's a catch-all term. There's web development, there's programming, there's app development, there's AI. That's the broadest term. Data science and information science are a bit more specific. Data science is basically, as the name suggests, you take vast amounts of data, sometimes data sets with 500,000 or 1 million entries, and you try and make sense of it, right? Information science, on the other hand, is taking that information that data science is extracted and figuring out how people interact with it. That sounds a bit abstract, so I'll try and give you an example. Data science would take into account geographic and weather data to predict that tomorrow Saturday night, there's going to be torrential rainfall in Bombay. Okay. Information science would take that assumption and say, okay, there's going to be torrential rainfall, so most people will not leave their homes. They'll be sort of bound to their homes, to their families. So let's play some nice family movies on TV so that everyone can have a good time together. So data science is just making sense of raw data, making quantitative sense of data, and information science is kind of figuring out how that data applies to people and how people can use that data. AI, which sort of, if I had to pick one area of computer science or computing that our kids are most interested in, it's AI, artificial intelligence. And I mean, I don't have to go into what AI is. I think everyone who is watching the news or who's followed stuff like ChatGPT is mostly familiar with what it is. It's training computers to act and think like human beings. And it's obviously, as we keep reading in the news, it's getting smarter and more robust, as time passes. AI is, I would say, totally undergirded by data science. The whole point is you feed your AI model data, and it learns and it becomes more and more refined and more smart. So data science sort of undergirds the whole concept of AI, and AI has applications, as we know, from in everything from manufacturing to healthcare, to banking and finance. So very sought after field, and like I said, most of our students who want to pursue careers in computing, whether they major in computer science or data science or AI or information science, the end goal for, I would say, about 70% of computer science aspirants is to have a career in AI. Okay. And then comes sort of the now sullied and neglected area of STEM, which is the pure sciences. When I started with the red pen around 6 or 7 years ago, we had way more people interested in pure sciences than we do now. And of course, now a lot of the pure sciences have given way to computing, because that's sort of the future, but still pretty popular with many of our students. And again, I've highlighted for the 4 main pillars of pure sciences: physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. And you'll see I've mentioned a few sub areas that students can choose to pursue. And I'll get to this in a second in a subsequent slide. But as with engineering and as with computer science, if you want to study a pure science, you are not really expected to have as developed or as advanced an idea of what you want to study within physics or chemistry, or even whether you want to study physics or chem or bio. That's not expected of you the way it's expected in engineering, right? So I've been having calls with a number of you recently, and even with sort of the batch of students who's a year above you. And I keep telling them, like, you can't say that, I like engineering, but I'm not sure if I like chemical or mechanical or electrical. You have to know, because most of the students who are applying will have a very clear idea of which engineering they want to do. Or if they're applying for a computing program, what exactly they want to study in computing, what experience they have, what their goals are. With science, it's a bit looser. Like it's okay if you don't know whether you want to study astrophysics or optics. It's okay if you don't know whether you want to study bio or chem. Of course, we'll recommend that you profile build in one of them, but it's not as stringent with the colleges when they're evaluating you that you be 100% sure. So that's the main difference between engineering and computing on one side and the sciences on the other. Before I go to the next slide, does anyone have any questions about this?
Yeah, what's the difference? I mean, you mentioned electrical engineering and computer engineering, right? They sort of overlap. So what's the difference between, so that's a very popular sort of a program. So what's the difference between that and computer science?
Computer science is purely software. Okay, I should have, thank you, Ritu, for bringing that up. I should have said that outright. Engineering is dealing with hardware, like physical devices, and computing is totally software. You're not dealing with any actual physical parts. Computer science does not involve putting together a computer, whereas computer engineering would involve putting together computers or devices that use computing or devices that use computer chips. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if somebody wants to get into robotics, they should take electrical
engineering. Yeah, they can take mechanical or electrical, but I would say by default, most of the kids I've worked with who have been interested in, who have been doing robotics for many years and who are interested in robotics are usually sort of veered towards electrical or computer engineering rather than mechanical, although they can also do mechanical.
Will that also by any chance have AI as an aspect? Yeah,
look, AI, all of these are interlinked. But when you're thinking, we conduct this workshop and we advise our students with sort of in the context of college applications. So yes, absolutely. When you work on any robot or when you work on a biomedical device or when you work on a computer, AI is very much a part of its function. But when we talk about profile building in preparation for applying to that major, it's more important that your experience with hardware than with programming or AI.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ritu. Thanks for that. So yeah, I should, for anyone who may have missed out on that, I think it's an important distinction that I was able to make thanks to Ritu's question. The difference between computer science and computer engineering is the fact that computer science and all computing majors deal with software and programming. You just need to work on your computer. Whereas computer engineering is dealing with hardware, actually putting things together. So many students come to us and say they want to do computer engineering, but they actually mean computer science. They want to do programming. So that's an important distinction to have, and I'm glad I was able to clarify that for anyone who may not be aware. Okay.
So Arnav, actually one question I had before we move on.
Go ahead, Partha. Go ahead.
Yeah, so is there any major which covers both aspects of computers, like computer science and engineering, or there is no such major?
At the moment, there is no such major. I mean, here's the thing. If you go into computer engineering and as part of your studies and your project work, you build devices, there will be a programming aspect there. But there is no joint major. Right? You will have a joint major between computer science and math. You'll have a joint major between computer science and economics. You'll even have a joint major between computer science and physics. But there's no real joint major. At least it's not a widespread major that you'll have computer science plus computer engineering.
Got it.
In equal parts.
And one related question is actually the other parts of computing what are mentioned here, like AI or data science or information science. So these are actually like separate majors and not together with science.
So in theory, they are all subsets of computer science. I could have written computer science instead of computing at the top because all of this falls under computer science. But as we're doing this in the context of college admissions, they are offered as separate majors. Not every college. Now, there are many colleges that will only offer computer science, and that computer science course will cover all of this. But now we're seeing more and more, especially the universities that are known for STEM, like Purdue, like the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, like the University of California campuses. They are, because there is such interest and there is so much sort of segmentation within computer science, they are now offering standalone majors like data science and AI and information science.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Partha. Anybody else have any questions? These are very relevant questions, and I'm glad to answer them. Parul, you unmuted. So
yes, hi, Arnav. I wanted to ask a little bit more about environmental science.
Sure.
What does this entail?
Environmental science is Well, as the name suggests, it's a study of environmental forces. Many students who pick up environmental science are very keen on conservation and sustainability. So it deals with devising or coming up with manufacturing and industrial processes that are environment friendly. What are more responsible packaging materials we can use as opposed to non-biodegradable materials like single-use plastics. So what are ways in which industrial processes precipitate acid rain in certain parts of the world? How can those be mitigated? So that's why it falls under chemistry, because it mostly entails a knowledge of compounds and how they react and how they impact the environment. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you. Understood. Yes, thank you so much. That's what I anticipated.
Sure.
And this combination of environmental science with economics, is that a combination that you think could be a good one?
Yes, because when you're, and I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to get to it later. I will get to it later, so I'll briefly answer it now. Some colleges are offering
no problem. You can pick it up the way you think is appropriate.
Sure. It is a very relevant thing, because if you want to, if you're devising environmentally friendly methods, the best way to sort of enforce them is through the government. Right? If government legislates that companies need to be environmentally friendly, that is the most assured way of ensuring that those methods find the benefits to the environment that you're seeking. So that combining that then the environmental science degree with economic policy, so that you can figure out how to make these methods financially viable for companies and how to make a win-win situation for everyone. It just makes sense to combine them. So now we're seeing, especially in the UK, a lot of universities are combining them. So thank you, Parul.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Sarma.
Yeah, sure. Kritin, you unmuted yourself, so I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, what all comes under optics?
Good question. I was hoping nobody would ask me that. But fortunately, my favorite professor in college was a PhD in optics. I'll answer it in brief because I don't know much about it myself. But I think optics is basically studying the properties of light and like lenses and like refraction, but of course I'm using very, very basic terms. This is done at a much higher level, and it has applications in, say, photography and disciplines like that.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a very convincing answer. I will research, Kritin. I can get back to you. But just so everyone knows, my own background is in mathematics. I've been with the Red Pen for so many years, and I think because when I joined, I was like the only person who had studied a STEM major in college. So I got like in my very first first few months with the Red Pen, I got assigned students who like science, and it just seemed to work out well. So since then, I've become the de facto STEM counselor at the company, even though my own background is in math, not in not in all these sciences. So Kritin, I will get back to you on that.
So Arnab, actually, I had just one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure, Partha.
Yeah, so if a student is actually doing more of profile building on the areas of programming and essentially a bit of AI and machine learning and those aspects, so does it mean that he's not exactly aligned if his interest also lies in the area of electrical and computer engineering?
Sorry, Partha, I lost you for a second. Could you please repeat what you were saying?
Sure. So I'll repeat. So basically what I asked is actually if a student is actually preparing or doing his profile building more on programming and certain aspects of AI and machine learning and those kind of projects. And so that's very well aligned with computer science and some of the other majors in that bucket. But does it not fit him for electrical and computer engineering at all? Or
so it's not that it doesn't fit the student at all. The at all is an absolute statement. Of course, we have seen students who have done software profile building and gotten in for engineering, but I mean, it's reasonable to think, right? If you're doing engineering, the colleges would prefer that you had hands-on work building things or experience in the engineering domain that you would like to study. So, of course, it's not a hard and fast rule. So I can't say that it is a wasted effort and you cannot get in for engineering, but it is not the recommended approach. It's recommended that you do your activities in the major that you want to finally pursue in college. So if I'm applying for electrical engineering and all of my, when I submit my application form to a university and all of my relevant STEM activities are programming and nothing in actually building something or working with circuitry, it may just make them think, why hasn't this child applied for computer science rather than electrical engineering?
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but of course, a lot of most of you are 11th grade and below. So if you're at a point now where your activities and your intended major are not aligned, that's okay, because that's the whole point of doing this workshop. So you can get that exposure, understand what you have to do, and then course correct if required. No one is in soup here. I just want everyone to know no one should be alarmed or panicked. There's a lot of time to fix everything.
Sure.
Okay.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Partha. Thank you. So now we look at the different criteria that these three broad areas of STEM evaluate when you apply to college. Most of this will have been discussed with you. I think this is probably the most important part of dealing with grade 11 students, is telling them this is what you're going to be how you're going to be looked at in college. You have to get this ready. I don't think you guys this will be new stuff for most of you, but still I'll go through it. The single most important component of a STEM application is the academics. It's the single most important component of any application. Even if you're applying for English, academics is the most important. But the academic standard and expectation at any college will be the highest for its STEM majors as compared to its social science or humanities majors. So the academics are very important, especially maths. And if you're applying for engineering or computing, physics is also very important. If you're applying for natural science, it's maths and that science that you're applying for. So if you're applying for bio, then maths and bio are very important. Physics you may not even be taking in your high school, so that's okay. So just bear that in mind, that your academics are the single most important part of your application. If you don't have amazing extracurriculars, but your academics are really good, you can still get into a really good university. If you don't have good academics and you have amazing extracurriculars, you're not going to get into a good university, because that is the initial filter. Okay, if you don't clear the filter of academics, the rest of your application will not get a serious look. So academics are the most important. Maths is absolutely crucial. One thing I want to clarify for computing, a lot of students think that they have to take computer science in school if they're applying for CS. Not at all true. In fact, most of our strong CS applicants will not take computer science in school. So it is not at all required. What really matters is your math grade for computer science, data science, AI, information science. Mathematics is the single most important grade on your transcript. Even if you don't have CS, that's completely fine. You must, if you're an IB, you must have math and one science at HL. If you're applying for engineering or computer science, that science must be physics. Although it's strongly recommended that in IB also you have physics, chemistry, and math at HL. Our most successful engineering and computer science admits have had PCM HL. It's not required, but it's strongly what's required is physics and math, but it's strongly recommended that even the third HL be a science and a lab science. Okay. With natural sciences, as I've said, your academics are equally strong. You must have math. You must have the science that you're looking at. So if you're looking at bio, it should be bio. If you're looking at chem, it should be math and chem. If you're looking at biochemistry, what I've been hearing a lot from people who are more familiar with the course than I am is that chemistry is more important for biochemistry than bio. So, bear that in mind as well. Along with your academics, your school academics, of course, science Olympiads are a great way to show academic rigor. And I just want to highlight one thing. The reason that the academic requirement or the expectation of doing well in Olympiads is higher for these three areas for STEM than for other majors is because simply they are probably the most difficult things to study in college, right? Just as in most schools, the science subjects are considered harder. In most universities, the science majors are considered much harder than the others. So it's the school's way of finding out, are you ready for the academic rigor of an engineering course or a computer science course or a pure science course? So that's why the academic standards for STEM subjects are higher than for other subjects. Similarly, SAT and ACT are very important for engineering, computing, and the natural sciences. We keep getting asked by parents who've heard that many colleges have gone test optional, a few have gone test blind, so maybe it's not important. They say that, but there are very few colleges that will actually, where we've seen students without an SAT or ACT score get in for engineering or computing. Our data clearly indicates that the most successful engineering and computer science and pure science students have submitted a strong SAT or ACT score. You'll see that for engineering and computing, I've said it's virtually required. Even if the college says we're test optional, it is required. For natural sciences, the requirement is not that hard, but I would say if it's 90% important for engineering and computer science, it may be 70 or 75% for the natural sciences, and maybe 40 to 50% for a humanities subject. So still very important. One thing to keep in mind for those of you who are in an Indian board, CBSE, ISC or HSC, you must do APs in order to demonstrate academic rigor, because for whatever reason, a lot of the universities in the US, and this is again, if you're looking at the US, a lot of the universities in the US do not rely very heavily on the mark sheets that Indian schools send, simply because they know internal marking is wildly inconsistent, right? In IB, grade 11 marking in one school is more or less consistent with the grade 11 marking in another school. But in CBSE or ISC, one school may mark very strictly, one school may mark very leniently, so it's not really reliable. So they really do value those AP scores if you're from an Indian board. If you're from IB or A levels, do not fret doing the APs. Definitely don't do APs in the same subjects you're doing in IB or A levels, because it's repetitive. Even if you get a 5 in physics, in the physics AP, if you're getting a 7 in physics HL in the IB, they are considered the same, and you get no credits or no points for getting a 5 in AP physics. So if you're in IB or A levels or any other curriculum that's not an Indian curriculum, speak to your counselor and determine whether the AP is required for you, whether it will be helpful for you, and which APs to take. If you're from an Indian curriculum and you're doing STEM subjects, you should be doing calculus BC for sure. If you're doing engineering or computer science, you should strongly consider doing the physics C AP. And there are 2 physics Cs. There's mechanics and there's electricity and magnetism. If you can do both, fantastic. If you can only do one, do mechanics. And if you're doing the natural sciences, then do an AP in calculus BC and then another AP in the science that you're applying for. So if you're applying for bio, try an AP biology. If you're applying for chem or biochem, try an AP chemistry. Okay, these are recommended. It's not possible for everyone to fit AP prep into their schedule, even if they're from an Indian board. So please speak to your counselor and they will tell you the best course of action. If an AP in physics or an AP in Calc BC is not doable, we'll find suitable alternatives. There are many AP subjects to choose from. These are just the most strongly recommended. Okay. Now, profile building for these courses. If you're doing engineering, it's coincidental that I've had this conversation twice in the last 1 week. And Partha, the conversation with you was the 3rd time that if you do a coding project, is that considered misaligned with engineering? And the short answer is yes. If you're applying for engineering, the 2 things that are most relevant in your activities list, number 1 are building prototypes. You may build drones, you may build battery cases, you may build rovers, you may build a wearable device, that has applications in healthcare. That is the best case scenario. That's the most favorable, the most desirable thing that you should do in profile building for engineering. The second best is if you can't build something, you can at least design it using CAD software. And designing things on CAD software is more applicable to mechanical and maybe civil. Rather than electrical atmospheric data to Earth. So we designed, sort of conceptualized this rover using CAD software, what it would be made of, what its size would be, what its weight would be, what its weight distribution would be, what tools would it employ to pick up this, what sensors would it employ to pick up data on the weather and the atmosphere and the soil, and how it could be sent back to Earth. So if you can't build prototypes, at the very least, you should be designing things using CAD software. The third most important thing is participating in competitions and fairs. So once you build your prototype, if you're working with a strong mentor, they will recommend that you submit your prototype or your CAD design or your concept for consideration in a competition. It could be a national science fair, could be a regional fair, could be a school competition, but entering your designs and your creations in these competitions, and if you win, that's a great plus on your application. Okay, so that's for engineering. For computing, most of our students will, like I said in the previous slide, that computing is so broad and students are now starting their computer science and computing profile building so early that by the time they're in grade 11 and 12, they have a pretty clear idea of where within computing they want to specialize. Do I want to do web development, which is, by the way, not very popular? Do I want to do AI, which is very popular? Do I want to do software development or video game design? So once you've identified that, you should have experience, building video games, building websites, building mobile apps, building AI models. Software applications, AI, ML models, competitions and fairs. Research, again, we discuss this with a lot of you. If you're doing engineering, research is not very important, although, it can be helpful. The same student who I told you designed that Venus rover also did research in astrophysics, and he got into a very good mechanical engineering program. So not very important for engineering, but it can be done. For computing, somewhat important. We've had students who've done research, and what that research has done is maybe not that research project itself has not been that substantial, but the skills they picked up while doing it, maybe the skills in Python or building a machine learning model or building a natural language processing model, the skill that they picked up was so significant that they were then able to use that skill that they learned in research to build their own projects and build their own models and then build their entire extracurricular profile around that. So that is where research can really pay dividends if you're looking at computing. And coming to natural sciences, it's research is the most important. In fact, I've mentioned lab experiments. Lab experiments and research sort of hand in hand. So I would say that's the best way to prepare for natural sciences. Internships, which I could not mention here, but I would say if you're like CAD designs, prototypes, AI, ML models, this is the same stuff that you will do in a relevant internship. So if you can't find a mentor to mentor you on building a project or doing a research paper, if somebody in your parents' network or somebody in any network that you have is able to offer you an internship, then that's perfectly well and good. We have a student last year who got into CMU for mechanical engineering. And for context, an Indian boy getting into CMU for mechanical engineering is very, very tough. And the main activity in his profile was that he interned at a drone manufacturer, and he talked about the different calculations and the different prototyping projects that he undertook in this internship, and that sort of course, he had excellent academics and everything else. All the other criteria were met. So internships can be great. So for the natural sciences, lab experiments and research are very important. If you can't figure it out through, or if you wouldn't like to do it through an external organization, you can always do it through an internship. These days, I've seen a lot of IB and even CBSE and HSC and A-levels. The school teachers are willing to mentor the students on science, on research projects. So if you have a physics teacher who's willing to do a project with you in the school lab and help you write that paper, that's perfectly fine. We keep getting asked, is the research paper mandatory? Because they are very expensive. If you hire outside organizations to guide you on writing a research paper, it can get exorbitant, the fees. It's perfectly fine if your school teacher guides you on it. There's no difference if you're helped by your school teacher versus some experienced researcher. No difference at all. Okay. The third thing to consider in the admissions aspect of these three areas of STEM is how you enter into them. For engineering, most schools will ask you to declare what engineering you want to apply for and then evaluate you for that engineering when they look at your application. However, you will be admitted as a general engineering student in the first year. So even though you're expected to have profile building in your domain that the box that you've checked, like I've checked electrical, it's expected that my profile building will relate to electrical engineering. But when I finally get my admission, in most colleges, it will say first year engineering or general engineering. That doesn't mean you haven't gotten your major. It just means it's the school's policy to allow students to come and take basic level courses, do basic level project work, and then decide, is it really mechanical that I want to do? Would I like to go into aerospace instead? Or is it really electrical I would like to do? Would I like to go into biomedical instead? So they give you that flexibility. The one thing to keep in mind though, you will be admitted to engineering, but if you select something else, if you select physics or economics, and then after 1 year decide you want to switch into engineering or switch into computer science, that's very hard. A lot of students are now aware, and mostly because we keep telling them that STEM is very hard. Engineering and computer science are the two hardest majors to get in college, the most competitive. So then they start wondering, oh, maybe I should apply for an easier major like physics or math and then switch later. That path is fraught with risk, because just as these schools cap their programs, there's a capacity on the engineering program, there's a capacity on the computer science program, so they can only admit so many. So just as it's so hard to get in as a freshman, it's equally hard or harder to get in as an internal transfer. So if I've gone in for physics and I think after 1 year I'll change to computer science or mechanical engineering, the chance of that happening is very slim. At a good university, very, very slim. So, it kind of circles back to that one question that was asked earlier. What if I want to apply for computer engineering, but my profile building is computer science, and I'm admitted to computer science, and then I want to switch to engineering? It may not work. Right? With the pure sciences, it's much easier. You are almost always admitted to a College of Arts and Sciences, again, not to a particular major, but the entire College of Arts and Sciences. And for context, everyone, at most US universities, there are three major verticals. There's a College of Engineering, a College of Arts and Sciences, and a College of Business. The College of Business and the College of Engineering are self-explanatory, right? Engineering majors are in the engineering college, business majors are in the business college. The College of Arts and Sciences contains everything else. So all your pure sciences, social sciences, humanities, English, French, gender studies, all of that is within the College of Arts and Sciences. And once you're admitted there, it's almost unrestricted. You can switch, between all the majors. Some universities cap some of their majors, but in general, if you're admitted to arts and sciences, you have a free hand in switching to any major you want. So like I said, the expectation of precision in profile building with natural sciences is not very high, nor is your commitment to that particular subject. So once I'm in, if I applied for physics, I got in for physics, decide after 1 year I'd rather do economics, that's fine. I can switch to economics. Can't switch to computer science, can't switch to engineering, or it would be very hard to, but I can switch within arts and sciences. And I think the final thing I'd come to, the final parameter, I would say this is the most important parameter, especially at the selective colleges. They're all looking for a particular type of student. And there's no way to fake this, because the way that I've listed 4 attributes, right? Curious, collaborating, hardworking, and resilient. And the way that they'll come to the conclusion about whether you match these attributes or whether you have these attributes is not just from what you say about yourself, but from what your teachers say about you. Your academics say loads about whether you're hardworking or not. The graph of your academics says a lot about whether you're resilient or not. If you had a drop in grade 10 and then you pick back up and you performed very well in grade 11 and 12, that shows that you're resilient. We keep telling you guys, whenever any of our students tell us that I didn't do so well in grade 10 in my boards, we tell them just work really hard in grade 11. If you get a high grade in grade 11, that improvement is valued so highly that it's almost as if you never dipped. That doesn't take away the dip, but that improvement really means a lot. And that out of all these 4 attributes, I think I would say the last one is the most important, mainly because, as I said earlier, these courses are really, really hard, very, very rigorous. Yeah, the universities need to be sure that they're admitting the right kind of people who can withstand that rigor. And resilience is a great way to prove that you can withstand that rigor. Curiosity, obviously, that shows through your essays, the projects you've undertaken, how unique are your projects. So everyone likes drones, but how have you explored your interest in drones? Have you done just a very generic design of a drone using CAD, or have you done a drone? Did you have maybe an ill elder person in your family who's not living in your house, maybe a grandparent who lived a few minutes away, and so you conceptualized a drone that could, you don't actually use it, I don't know what the laws are around deploying drone, but you conceptualized a drone that could carry medicine to that person's house, right? And is there that story around that? So that's how they determine your curiosity. Of course, they also look at what your teachers say about you, how your subject teachers describe you as interacting in class. But that's very important. Collaborative, you have to be somebody who works well with others. Engineering and computer science is almost entirely a team effort. Any project you do in engineering, any project you do in AI, ML, information science, you will be relying on others, not only others in your discipline, but in other disciplines. I was saying earlier how information science will take data and then process and figure out how human beings will interact with that data. So that requires expertise in obviously computer science or data science, but also economics, also psychology, also sociology. If there's hardware involved in the project you're doing, also engineering. So they have to see that you are someone who works well in teams. So collaborative is very important, and hardworking and resilient, I already touched on. So before I go to the next slide, any questions about the criteria that you will be evaluated on?
Is there a preference between SAT and ACT?
No, Kritin, none at all. There's no, I'm glad you asked that. We are asked that often. There is no preference whatsoever between the SAT and the ACT. Anybody else?
And the SAT and ACT, sorry, just one very
Go ahead.
small. I did speak with Nanika in the afternoon, but I wanted to reconfirm. SAT and ACT is only US.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
There are, I think again, off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure, but in Singapore, there and any of the counselors on the call, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there are a couple of colleges that will look at the SAT, but it doesn't have the same weight that it does in a US application. And again, whether they look at the SAT also depends on your citizenship. I think if you're an Indian national, they may not look at it. Maybe only if you're a US national. Then again, speak to your counselor, Parul. I'm not sure whom you're working with, but we'll get the answer for you.
Yeah, okay. I'll
but definitely in the
Thanks.
UK and Canada. Okay, so Nanika says yes, a handful in Singapore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So with computer science, how early on should we be sure about our specialization? Like whether it's data sciences or AI?
Oh, okay. That can be even by the end of grade 11.
Okay. So we should be completely sure about it, right?
Yeah, I would say by the time grade 12 starts, you should know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The thing is, I'll tell you, Arush, anybody who's doing computer science or engineering will have one major project in their profile. Okay. So I think that major project should be in that subdomain that, like, let's say I want to do data science. Then my one big spike in my application should be a data science project. And that major project usually happens anytime after like January of this year. So midway through 11th grade, most students it'll happen in the summer between 11 and 12. So they'll start it towards the end of 11th and it'll continue through the summer. So that one main project that you do should be in that area that you've identified. So latest end of 11th, I would say, Arush.
Just stemming from that, I had one question. Now, in A levels, some schools offer IPQs. So is that something that's considered as a project here, or that's over and above?
It is considered a project. So we've had a lot of internal discussion on this, because the IPQ, unlike the EE, is optional. If you take it, it would be considered as a project. And it's and by the way, for anyone whose school offers it and who's on the fence, I absolutely recommend doing the IPQ. If you have the time and the bandwidth to do it, obviously. Discuss with the counselor, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Anam, actually, I just missed like what you just described. Can you elaborate a bit for me? I didn't understand like this last discussion.
IPQ.
Yes.
Okay, so for those who don't know, the A-levels curriculum, the Cambridge A-levels curriculum, offers the option for students to do you can call it a research paper. It's called, I think the IPQ stands for International Project Qualification. So it's basically you teaming up with any teacher in your school who will mentor you, and you'll do like an extended research paper, similar to the EE or extended essay in the IB curriculum. Unlike the IB, where EE is mandatory, in the A-levels, IPQ is optional. So I always recommend to students, especially the ones who are looking at STEM subjects, to do that they should take the IPQ and do the IPQ. Is that clear, Partha?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so this is, I won't spend too much time on this. I think, the most important part of the discussion was the admission part, but I'll just quickly take you through what coursework and projects look like. In all of these, you'll have the foundation will be in math and sciences. In engineering, it'll obviously be math and physics. In computer science, it'll be math and sort of data science and stats. In natural sciences, it'll be math and whichever science you're choosing. And then you get to choose advanced electives in that particular domain. You'll take advanced courses in engineering or information science or data science, thermodynamics, whatever the case may be. The one thing that separates computing and natural sciences from engineering is that most computing and natural science programs will offer the option of an honors program with a thesis. So that is where that's basically a research paper. It's like a college level IPQ. You team up with any one professor with whom you have a good rapport, or whose coursework or whose own research interests mirror your own research interests. You will decide on a topic and you'll research it over the course of one semester or 1 year. and it'll end in a thesis. And if you're able to successfully defend your thesis in front of a committee, you will be given the honors diploma along with your graduation. So that's a very nice way to prepare yourself for graduate school or research, if that's what you would like to do after graduating, the honors program with the thesis. And it really allows you to pick any one area. Let's say, I think one of the students earlier asked me I think Kritin, you had asked me what is optics, so I don't know who it was. So if you decide that you like optics, then you can choose a professor who researches into optics, or who specialized, who did their PhD in optics, and then research an optics topic with them. So it gives you the opportunity to explore one area in your subject at more depth than the college curriculum or coursework allows, right? And it gives you a taste of what graduate school would be like. So that's always great. Outside the classroom, they look a bit different, engineering and computing and natural sciences. Engineering will have a lot of work that's done in what are known as maker studios and labs, right? A lot of the top engineering programs have dedicated maker spaces in on their campuses, where you can go. You'll have wood cutters, 3D printers, welding machines, really advanced state-of-the-art equipment where you can sort of collaborate with others and build really cool concepts, or build drones, build furniture, build cars, whatever the case may be. So that's a huge part of the engineering curriculum. And a lot of these projects will let you work with other disciplines, like interdisciplinary work, right? So if you're an engineer who wants to build, who wants to conceptualize or maybe build a self-driving electric car, so you'll get to maybe collaborate with people who are majoring in psychology, people who are majoring in policy, to know about how you can make a car that obeys traffic rules and things like that. Ethics is now a huge question around artificial intelligence. So a lot of computer science majors do collaborate with philosophy majors on projects that have to do with AI and machine learning. So that's always a very a fun sort of interdisciplinary opportunity that you can avail of in college. Engineering and computing programs typically have very good, entrepreneurial ecosystems around them, especially at the good universities. So you'll have some kind of a club or a department on campus where you can go and pitch ideas and get very, very tiny amounts of funding. Maybe the college runs like a small fund for student entrepreneurs, and if you would pitch your idea, many colleges have like a startup garage or things of that nature, where you can go and try and get some initial funding for an idea and work with your friends. That's fantastic. Natural sciences, I mean, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is also available for students in any major. It's just availed of a lot more by engineering and computing students rather than natural sciences. I think the students I've had who have been genuinely, passionate about studying natural sciences have not really been interested in entrepreneurship or any other career. They've mostly been passionate about research, and that's what they've spent their time doing. I have a student who went to Cornell to study physics. He double majored in math and physics. He was a recipient of the Tata Scholarship, which, for those who are not aware, is a full scholarship to Cornell for Indian students. So he spent a lot of his time doing really advanced research in physics and the math of music. So he's also a pianist. So he did a lot of research into the math behind music and how AI can be used to generate music or melodies that he could play on the piano. So very cool stuff, but not really not really that much hands-on work. It's more research in labs and on computers. I think another thing to keep in mind, I mentioned this earlier when I talked about how important resilience is for STEM students, but the atmosphere in engineering and computer science departments, from what the feedback we get, is pretty competitive, right? So usually the students are not really fazed by it, because the atmosphere in schools between competitive STEM students is also competitive. So between the high performing or any students who like STEM, usually the atmosphere is competitive, so they're prepared for that. It's not as competitive for the natural sciences. There's not the sense of having to be at the top of the pack, be ahead of the others. Is not that prominent with natural sciences, but in engineering and computing, it is a competitive course, and that's not to disparage these courses. It's just something that you should be aware of. This is one of those intangible parts of the university experience that some students are not prepared for, but it's important for you to know beforehand that if you go in for a very rigorous and a very selective program in STEM, the fact that it's selective and it only admits the really high achieving students means the atmosphere there will be quite competitive. So just bear that in mind, because we've had a few students, a small handful, who've been exceptionally bright, but just told us, look, my high school is really competitive. I just have not liked it at all. That's not how I enjoy learning. So we have to then look at programs in colleges accordingly, because obviously the child's happiness is the most important, right? So that's something that if you want us to include in your college and course research, we'll happily factor that in. Okay. I want to very quickly, this is the slide I'll spend it's the last slide, and it's the slide I'll spend the least amount of time on, only because we could do a 2-hour session that's just about careers in STEM. There are so many careers. I could go into each career for, like, biomedical engineering has its own list of careers. Biochemistry has its own list of careers. Data science has one list of careers. So I won't go into too much depth. We just get asked a lot. So if the child, I'm working with one student here whose dream was to get in, or whose goal at the moment, of course it could change, was to get into an investment banking job, right? Work in trading or investment banking. And even though they love STEM, they wondered, would studying STEM allow them to pursue that career? The answer is absolutely yes. The one thing I will point out, as an engineering or a computer science or a pure science major, you will be at the top of the pecking order for any job. So even if you're applying for management consulting or finance, they won't go to the business majors first or the economics majors first. They'll go to the engineers, the computer science kids, and the science kids first, because that's whom they want to hire. That's the kind of analytical background and thinking that they want, right? So the number of ticks signifies how likely somebody from that major is to go. All of these sort of professions on the left side, or these industries on the left, are open to are open to STEM majors. The number of green or the number of check marks really just signifies how likely it is that these students go into these. So a lot of engineering and computing students will actually end up going into careers in finance and management consulting, because they pay so well. Similarly with startups, it's not just a computer science major who can go and work in Uber or Facebook or any new startup that comes about just because they've studied computer science. Engineering and physics and pure science majors go into startups at the same rate. So there's absolutely no barrier to entering the startup industry if you've studied the pure sciences. Research and academia, most popular amongst pure science majors. I told you earlier how a lot of the extracurriculars you'll do if you study pure sciences will be lab research. So it just tends to be something. It's not that the natural science students are only able to get research and academia. It's that that's what they usually prefer. If they want, they can go into any one of these 6 broad categories I've put up, but a lot of them prefer to go into research and academia. Similarly, social work and policy is not really a very popular choice amongst these kids, but if they want to do it, they can, because like I said, they're always at the top of the pecking order. So if they have a passion or an interest in social work, or somebody asked me earlier about economics and environmental science. So if you've studied chemical engineering and you want to work on developing sustainable manufacturing practices, and you want to advocate for them rather than actually go and work, you want to advocate for these practices to be implemented rather than go and work in a company, you can go into public policy, right? Same with postgraduate study. I think of these three, the pure science students are most likely to pursue higher studies in their subject. Computer science students less so, and I would say engineering students maybe of the three the least likely. They are still likely to go into it, but they're just less likely than a computer science or a pure science student. And I use the term manufacturing and research and development in the end. That's such a massive term. It encompasses basically anything. You can, if you're an engineer, you can go and work in an auto manufacturer. You can go and work for General Motors or Chrysler. On developing their next generation of autonomous vehicles. If you're a computer science student, you can go and work on similarly on self-driving technology. If you're a natural science student, you can go into the healthcare industry, work in imaging, diagnoses, whatever you want. You can go and work in, if you're an electrical engineer or a computer engineer, you can go and work in an acoustics company like Bose, the company that makes speakers and headphones. They take a lot of engineers from MIT. Incidentally, the founder of Bose was an MIT alum. So they take a lot of engineers from MIT to help develop their products. So this is I'm giving you very, very sort of superficial ideas of what careers you can pursue. If you want to discuss this at more depth, please contact your counselor. I'm also happy to join any call and take you through the options you have, because there's a laundry list of options within finance and consulting. What can you do? Are you going to be client facing? Are you going to work on mergers and acquisitions? Will you be a data analyst? It's very, very granular. So I just we don't have that time in this session, but if you need that clarity, we're happy to discuss that with you as well. So that's the end of the presentation. I want to open it up for questions. If you guys have any, I'll stop sharing my screen. You don't need to see this silhouette. You can just see my face, maybe a bit more personal. So yeah, does anyone have any questions about the presentation we've just had? Anything about profile building, admissions, what you need to do? Great.
Yeah, I have one question.
Yeah,
I've been, I've heard some stories like some kids who get into, say, an engineering course or computer science course in the US. Sometimes they realize they're not able to cope up with the rigor, and then they have an option to switch to, say, in economics or something. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I was going through the process of admission earlier, I touched on this, but I think it's important that I highlight this for you guys. Switching into engineering or into computer science is very hard. It's almost impossible, right? Because they're such competitive majors. Switching out of them into something like economics or physics or math is almost like there's no barrier to doing it. You can just go and declare a major change in most cases. Right. So that is absolutely right, Ritu. Many students who go in who either decide they don't like engineering or decide it's too rigorous and they're not able to, they're not happy studying engineering or computer science, they can switch into something else like economics, history, physics. There's no barrier to changing into something that's regarded as a pure science or a pure social science humanities subject. The challenge is with switching into engineering or into computer science, which is very hard. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Okay, I see a message. Yeah, anytime. Thank you, Ketan. Thank you so much for your message. Anytime you guys, like I said, there are many of you whom I've worked with, so I've already spoken to you, so I will keep speaking to you, but if you and I don't work together and you need any insight from me, please let your counselor know. I'll be happy to join a call and explain anything that you need. Thank you everyone for joining us. We have one more session tomorrow on psychology and biochemistry, so looking forward to having you guys on that for those who are interested, and otherwise good luck and see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.